Here are 5 things I've learned about ministry. Over the last 7 years, my wife and I have been pastoring in some kind of capacity. So we've learned a lot. There's obviously still a lot more to learn. But whatever I have learned so far, I definitely want to talk to you about it. There's 5 things that I think are really important. And if we continue to work on these 5 things in our lives, in our ministries, I believe that we'll do better. I know that all of us can improve in whatever ministry we're in. So here are 5 things that I believe that we should do in ministry that I've learned over the last 7 years of pastoring. So the number one thing that we need to do is we have to keep the right priorities in order. Oftentimes we get so caught up in ministry and not performing for people, even if we're doing it for the Lord, we get caught up in just doing our job, whether it's pastoring, leading, maybe you're writing messages, maybe you're writing songs, maybe you're singing songs, maybe you're doing production or video or whatever kind of ministry you're in. I think sometimes we can get so caught up in the work of it that we forget the real priorities of our life. In Revelation 2, verse 2-4, it says, I know your works, your toil, and your patient endurance, and how you cannot bear with those who are evil, but have tested those who call themselves apostles and are not, and found them to be false. I know you are enduring patiently and bearing up for my name's sake, and you've not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you've abandoned the love you had at first. So often, we can easily put ministry and all these other things that we're doing for God above God. When it comes to ministry, we can make it an idol if we're not careful. Our whole life could be consumed with just doing church ministry, just doing the thing that God has called us to, and that becomes our idol. We want to be the best at that. We want to do our best at that. And again, doing your best and even improving yourself to somewhat become the best, it's not wrong within itself, but the problem becomes when those things become the priority over what really matters. The number one thing that should matter the most to us is God. If your ministry is over God in your life, if you're more concerned about spending time working on ministry than spending time in moments with God, praying and talking to the Lord, then you've made ministry your idol. And as we make ministry our idol, our whole life can easily become off track. We start to put things first that don't really matter. My prayer in ministry, as I've been serving God, as we've been pastoring, has always been, Lord, if you're not in this, I don't want to do it. God, if this is not for you, I don't want to do it. Lord, if I lose my love and my passion for you as I'm building ministry, God, I don't want to do ministry, because it can easily become an idol. It can easily become a distraction. It can easily become something that you put before God. So in your ministry, whether it's pastoring, whether it's leading people, whether it's leading a worship team, no matter what you're doing, make sure that God is first. Don't ever get so caught up in doing ministry that you neglect the responsibilities that really matter. I look at my life, and honestly, my most important job is, yes, to be a son of God, right? That is my role. That's my identity. I want to please God. I want to spend time with God. I want to know God. I want to live for God. He is my number one priority. Secondly is my marriage. My marriage has to be second. Ministry does not come before my marriage. Church does not come before my marriage. My marriage is second unto God, right? And I think we can mix this up. We can neglect the things that really matter in exchange for things that are temporary, in exchange for things that don't really make that big of a difference. Even then, after marriage, it's children. I want to be a good father. I want to raise my kids to love the Lord, to have a father who's present, a father who lives with integrity, a father who is a good example to them. And if we're not careful, as I said, we can lose track of the things that matter. We could misalign our priorities, put them in the wrong order. We can put ministry above all these different things, and we have to be careful. We have to be vigilant, to our own self to say, okay, how do I keep what really matters most first in my life? Don't get so caught up in ministry that it becomes your idol. So that's number one, is keep the right priorities in order. Number two, and this is a really important lesson that I think is really helpful, and I'm still learning. Number two is you will not get everything right, and you cannot please everybody. When we get into a new role, I remember when we were a pastor, as we first started to pastor a church, I don't know what it was in me, but I just wanted to not make everybody happy. You know, we have to preach the truth and we have to preach the word of God, and not everybody's going to like that. But I really wanted to please people. I wanted people to like our church. I wanted people to like me as a pastor and like my family. And I didn't, so because I wanted everybody to like me, I felt like I had to do everything right. And it just messed me up, because the more you try that, the more you begin to realize that you cannot do everything right, and you're not going to get it right all the time. As a leader, as a pastor, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're going to disappoint people. You're going to make people upset because of decisions you make. And you have to understand that you're not going to get it right all at once. And the good thing is this, is if you're making mistakes, if you're failing, that means you're taking some risks. That means you're trying new things, and that is good, right? I think sometimes it's good to fail. I'd rather fail trying to do something new or trying to do something better or trying to improve the ministry, improve our leadership, improve our church, and fail trying than stay where I'm at and never fail and always be stagnant and always be exactly in the same place for years. So making mistakes is a good thing. We got to learn to love it. I remember I used to play the drums back in my old church. I was a drummer for a long time. And I remember I had this season in my life as a drummer where my goal was every time I go play the drums for a service, I want to mess up. Now, messing up on the drums is super embarrassing. If you do it bad enough, everybody notices, right? You just go look up some church fails on Instagram, and you'll find that the drummer messes up and it becomes a clip, right? Luckily, back then, we didn't have all that. But I remember I would try something new because I knew that if I was messing up, that means I was stretching myself to do something different. That means I was working on improvements and not just staying the same. And so failing is not always a bad thing. You can't always get it right, and that's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall. It's okay to try something new, take a risk, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I remember too in our church, we had this idea. We're like, well, let's try double services. Let's go for it. Let's attempt to do 2 services at our church, and we did it, and it didn't work out, and we went back to 1. And some people might look at that and say, oh, you really messed up. You failed. You should have never done it. I love it. I love that we took a risk, that we wanted to grow, that we wanted to learn something about ourselves, about our church, about our ministry. And it taught us a lot of good lessons. If you get everything right all the time, then you'll never fail. And you'll never learn that in failure, you learn some of the greatest lessons of your life. You learn some of the best things that you can apply in the future. Like, okay, now I know. So for our church, now I know in the future what to look for when we want to go into double services, because I made a mistake, because we I guess you could call it a failure. It didn't work out the way we wanted it to, right? So you're not going to get it all right all at once, and you're not going to please everybody. Again, people are not going to like you. They're not going to like the way you preach. They're going to have something to say about everything. Don't do it to please people. Do it to please the Lord. If that's your mindset of pleasing people all the time, you've got to change that. This doesn't mean, okay, I do want to make sure that we clarify this. When I say like don't try to please people all the time, that doesn't mean to be mean to everybody. That doesn't mean to purposely offend people just because you want to be an offensive pastor or offensive leader, or you want to create clicks on YouTube or whatever it is. We still got to love people, and you still got to listen to opinions. You still got to do all that, but don't take every opinion. Don't listen to every voice, right? Don't try to please everybody. Do what's right. Live with integrity. Do your best. Love your people, and realize you're going to make mistakes, and some people are not going to like you. You're not going to please everybody. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, this is super important, especially in the days that we live in where everybody gets offended. Everybody's bothered by somebody else, by something else. It's just insane how with the world we live in. You can't say anything without somebody getting upset. But so with that, tip number 3, when it comes to ministry, very, very, very important. Don't take things personally. Not everything is towards you to offend you or to hurt you, right? I think oftentimes as ministers, as pastors, we take everything so personally. Oh, somebody said they didn't like the sound in our church. Oh man, they don't like me as a pastor. They don't like me leading. Oh, somebody said they didn't like my sermon. That means they're not really my friend. They don't really care. And we just hear these things and we take it to heart. Man, you gotta let that go. I mean, we're not even that big on YouTube, right? We're almost at 5,000 subscribers, which is actually pretty cool. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe right now. But we're at what, like 4,300 subscribers, about almost 2,000 followers on Instagram, and we post videos all the time. Like, we post videos about preaching, we post videos about different things within the church, and you know what's funny is people comment some of the meanest things. Like, they say some of the craziest things. I want to see if I could find one real quick. Let me make sure my volume is off, because they're just funny. Let me see. I don't want to waste too much time looking at this, but I think somebody commented, "Stop shoving your religion down people's throats." Right? A lot of people said, "Leave me alone. Keep this to yourself." And even on some other videos, man, people are just mean sometimes. But you're doing something for the Lord. You're working hard. You're preaching truth. People are gonna say things about you. People are gonna write crazy comments. People are gonna send you crazy messages. And we're not even that big of a ministry yet, and we're still getting that. And so you've got to be prepared for that. And when those things come, don't take it personally, right? I look at it like it's just people on Instagram. I'm not gonna change my whole life because one person commented something, and I keep that mindset with everything I do. I'm not going to change the way I completely do ministry because one person said something about me. I'm not going to change the way I preach because one person doesn't like it. If you take things personally, then what you're going to do is you're going to try to bend for every single comment, every single criticism that you get, because it becomes about you. Everybody's talking about you. Can't take things personally. Ecclesiastes 7:21 says, "Do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you." What I learned in ministry, when it comes to taking things personally, you got to remember this, is when you're working with people, hurt people will hurt people. I know we've all heard that phrase. We all understand what it means, yet we still don't apply it to certain things when it comes to ministry. I mean, when we're pastoring, when we're ministering, we're working with a lot of people who are dealing with a lot of church hurt, a lot of baggage, a lot of things that have gone on in their lives that that they're still dealing with. And sometimes they take it out on their leaders. They take it out on other people. But you can't take that personally. I've had to deal with people, and in that, it's brought a lot of personal pain where, because of what they're going through, because of what people are going through, they've talked about me. They've talked about my wife. They've talked about my family. And yeah, does it hurt? Of course it hurts. Does it bother me? Of course it does. It bothers me, but I'm not gonna take it personally, because if that person that said whatever they said about me came back to our church, I'd love them just the same, because I understand that what they're going through has a lot. It really shapes the things they say and the things they do, and so I can't take it personally. I have to understand that they're dealing with things. And Proverbs 19:11 says, "Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense." James 1:19, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Man, we've got to take this. I love that verse in Psalm 19:11. It is his glory to overlook an offense. We've got to stop holding on to every little offense, every little critique, every little complaint, and take it personally. We're called to love people. And you've got to love people even when they talk badly about you. And the best way to continue to love people that do that kind of stuff to you is don't take it personally. Okay, before I get to the next point, is it possible, Josh? There's waters in the fridge next door. Can you grab me a one, please? I've been dealing like this congestion, It's like itching my throat. But let me know if this is blessing you. Let me see. Let's see who's online here. We got Giovanni. What's up, Giovanni? From Round Rock, Texas. Nice to have you on the stream. Anthony, what's up, man? Tony, Anthony, these tips are fire. I really hope so. I hope it's helping you. And, these things are good for me too. Edgardo, Pastor, help me to pray. Man, praying for you, man. Message me. Send me a message on Instagram. We'll pray together. Adarsh, welcome. Thank you for joining the stream today. Welcome to all of the people that are watching us right now. Let me get some water real fast. Adar says it's a good word. I hope so. All right. So I think that was point number 3. Don't take things personally. Real quick, when it comes to that, you can live that life of overcoming offense by forgiving and by living with thick skin. Just let things go. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't there are so much. Let me go back to this real quick. There's so many comments on our videos. I don't even respond to them. I don't need to respond to them. Just let it go. I'm not going to let it offend me. I'm not going to let it get to me. So don't take things personally. Don't get offended so easily. Number 4, man, I feel like all these are really important. But number 4 is make sure you have the right people in your life, in your circle. Not everybody needs access to your entire life. You don't have to be best friends with every single person in your church or in your ministry. There are certain people that you should allow in for influence, for accountability, and all that good stuff. But you have to make sure it's the right people. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." It's so funny that in church, we try to help people and say, like, man, you got to hang out with the right people. You know, maybe your old friend's not good for you. And it's almost like people get offended by that, right? Like, well, who are you to tell me who I can't hang out with? Why can't I hang out with them? You know, Jesus hung out with sinners. Like, yeah, Jesus helped sinners. Jesus didn't just spend time with them just to hang out with them. He was there to encourage them, to minister to them, to forgive them, to save them, to set them free, right? Totally different than, oh, I'm just hanging out with people who don't know Jesus because I just want to be around them. You've got to be very careful about who you let into your life. And when people like leaders or even churches saying, listen, those people are not good for you, it's not about control. It's about helping. Look at what the Bible says. I mean, the Bible's saying the same thing. Be careful who you hang out with. Who you hang out with is what you become, right? So who is in your circle? The people around you will determine the direction your life goes and ultimately where you end up. Those people around you are really important. So you got to be careful about the voices you're listening to, about the influences you have in your life. They might sound good. They might feel good. They may make you feel good, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. You need people that will speak in with wisdom, with biblical advice, with spiritual understanding and spiritual strategy and spiritual guidance. For me, I listen to voices that are filled with faith and wisdom. I've been in many situations, especially in pastoring, where I've come across, do I take a move of faith or do I stay where I'm at? Now, I called a bunch of people and I asked them, what would you do? And what's interesting is there was a few voices that were like, no, stay where you're at. Don't step into it. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too much money. You're not ready. And, you know, it sounded good because it was easier. I mean, I wouldn't be stretching myself and it was perfect. But there was a couple of voices that I called that were saying, you know what? Maybe you should try it. Maybe you should take the step of faith. And I listened to them, and now we're walking in blessing because of their advice. It's really important who you let into your life. From now on, I call people who are filled with faith, who walk in wisdom, and who really have fruit in their life. It matters who is in your circle. Again, not everybody has to have access to your life. Not everyone has to have access to your time. Your circle of friends matters more than you probably think. And you can't keep people around just because they've been around forever. If somebody that you know forever is still dragging you down, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to bring people into your circle that are actually going to push you to do things that God has called you to do. You need people who are already there or are striving to get somewhere that you desire to be. Your circle really matters. So that's number 4, I think. I think this is the last one. Here you go, number 5. Timmy Lay, welcome to the stream, man. Thanks for joining us today. Before I get into the last one, if you're watching the live or you're watching the recorded version of this, leave a comment below. Let me know that this blessed you. If you have any questions about ministry or pastoring or the church or anything like that, leave the questions in the comments. I'd love to get to them. Maybe I message you. Maybe I write back in the comment, or maybe I get it onto the next video. But I'd love to get to your comments. I'd love to get to your questions. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe right now. And when you subscribe, turn on the notifications so that you can see every single time we release content just like this. We've got a whole month planned out of really good content, so make sure you subscribe today. Okay, the last one, and I think this is super important, especially in today's world, because we live in this mindset of whatever I want it right now. We've forgotten the art of waiting and working for things in our future. We call it the microwave generation, right? Everything is instant. So number 5, the last thing, is when you are walking in God's calling, when you are walking in ministry, when you have dreams of ministry, take your time. Don't rush God's timing. I think so often we can push and push and push, and we try to knock down doors instead of allowing God to open them. We try to force connections instead of divine connections from God. We try to make things happen and say, I want it right now, instead of waiting for the hand of God to bless what we're doing, to bless where we're going. And so you've got to take your time. Do not rush God's calling or God's timing on your life. Proverbs 16:9 says, the heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. See what God does, and I love what he does. I love that he does this, is he gives us a vision, right? We sometimes we see the end goal. And when we see the end goal, we have this motivation. We have this drive to say, yes, Lord, I want to answer that. I believe, God, you're calling me to preach to thousands, or you're calling me to be a missionary. You're calling me to be an entrepreneur that can bless other ministries because of the wealth that I'm going to create because of your grace, right? We see this vision. And then sometimes, if we're not careful, we can try to get to the vision the next day. Instead of saying, okay, God, what are you needing to do in me? And the process from the dream to the actual moment of encountering that. What needs to be done in my life? Because God will make us wait. God will show us the dream, give us the passion, and say, okay, this is where I'm taking you, but you've got to trust me in how you're going to get there. And as you trust him in the process of getting to the end goal or to the vision, you'll find that God is working on you. He's changing us in the process as we're waiting. Man, I've seen this in my own life so many times, and I'm still seeing it today, that God will give me a vision. He'll give me a dream. But then he'll reveal that there's still things in my life that need to be shifted, that need to change, where I need to trust him more, where I need to be obedient more, where I need to sacrifice more, become more disciplined. And he's teaching me this in the process. He's showing me what's going on in my life, what needs to change as I'm stepping towards my dream. If I just force it to happen, and you guys have to be careful, especially in the days of like social media, and you could just blow up and go viral. But if you force something to happen, you may enter into your calling too soon, and you're not prepared for it. And when we are not prepared to carry the blessing that God has for us in the future, we squander it. We lose it. You look at the story of the prodigal son. He asked his dad, he's like, God, or he said, it's in the story, it's a representation of God the Father. But he says, Dad, I want my inheritance now. Everything you're going to give me, I want it right now. Now, we know that the inheritance comes after the father passes, and he gets it way down the line when you're a little more mature, a little bit older. But for the parable's sake, I'm assuming the father gives in. He says, okay, I'm going to give you everything that you would have got in the future, and I'm going to give it to you now. And what happens is the son takes all the wealth that he has, and he goes and he wastes it. He parties all night. He does all this. He lives this crazy lifestyle, loses everything. We see at the end of the story, he's basically eating with pigs, and he gets this bright idea. He's like, I need to go back home. I need to be with my dad again, right? So it shows us that if we fight too much and we make things happen and we get too much before we're ready, we're going to waste it. We're going to lose it. We're going to miss what God is really wanting to prepare us for. And so when you're walking with God, when you have a dream, when you have a calling, you cannot rush it. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Don't say, well, they're already there. I want to get there too. No, forget all that. Say, God, what are you doing in me in this season right now? And how can I prepare for my future? So those are 5 things that I really believe we should really make sure. 5 things I've learned, right? Things that we need to add to our life, that we need to learn from in our life. That I think if you learn these lessons now, it's going to really help you. So let's go ahead and recap. Number 1, keep the right priorities. Number 2, understand that you won't get everything right and you can't please everybody. Number 3, don't take things personally. Number 4, make sure to have the right people in your life. And number 5, take your time. Don't rush God's calling. So if that blessed you, let me know. If you got questions, leave them in the comments. I have a couple of questions on Instagram I'm going to jump to real quick. Let me see. There you go. All right, here's a few questions. Number 1 is, when do you know it's your time to enter the pastoring ministry? Man, this is a tough question because I think it's different for everybody. And so I guess I can give you my own answer. The answer, I believe, is that when you're willing to do whatever God is calling you, and you almost say, okay, God, I'm going to put the dream on the shelf and say, I'm just trusting you in today. I think when you're able to disconnect from the identity of a pastor and just rest in the identity as a child of God, then I think you're ready for more ministry. Because too often we attach our identity to a position and a title. And if your identity is attached to that, then you're not ready for it. And so I think when you're okay not doing it, but you still have a dream for it, you still have the calling for it, I think that's a good sign that the time is there. And also when you're, if you have good leaders around you, when they're able to release you, that's something I think even today, again, we're all messed up in today's world, but something I think we forget, and people kind of just want to go off and do their own thing. If you want to be a pastor, you want to be a leader, you want to be in ministry, you need a leader in your life. You need a pastor to release you, to send you, right? So that's another factor in it. Giovanni says, oh, Manny, what's up, man? That was your question, actually. I just got to it. How to manage a balance between give steps but not try to force things. Oh, I get you. Like how to manage between like what is taking initiative and what is forcing. I think honestly it's listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit. You voice of the Holy Spirit and walking in obedience again to your leadership. I think when we are okay responding to them and saying yes to them, we're trusting their guidance to say, okay, they're leading me, they're helping me get to where I need to go, right? So perfect example would be like this. Initiative, let's say initiative versus forcing. Initiative sits down with a pastor and says, hey, I'm ready to do this. What do you think? Well, the pastor may respond and say, hey, it's not time yet. Do this, this, and this first, and then let's talk again. That is initiative. You're not just sitting, waiting, saying, okay, God, speak to me when it's time to go. You're talking to someone that's helping you. That's initiative. Forcing is, pastor, I'm going to leave this church and go pastor a church, and so you better send me if you want to be part of it. That's forcing, right? So those are the difference between initiative and forcing. Is initiative is done with wisdom and spiritual guidance. Forcing is really done through the flesh. Here's another question. Why do churches stay small after many years? That's a great question. Easton, you want to come answer that? No, kidding. Why do churches stay small after many years? Listen, I could not give you an accurate answer for that. I think there's a lot of data you'd have to look into. That you got to look into where the church is located, all that stuff. Now, generally, I think anything that is healthy will grow. And so if a church hasn't grown in a long time, you have to look into the health of the leadership. You have to look into the health of the pastor. You have to look into what's being taught. There's a lot of different factors, but I would say this: just because something is small doesn't mean it's not, or doesn't mean it's not God. It's just because something is big doesn't mean it is God, right? So we have to be very careful and say, well, this church needs to shut down because they're so small. But also, we also have to be wise and say, man, maybe it's time to close down. Maybe it's not being efficient. Maybe it's not really being effective. And so I don't really know why. I mean, like I said, there's a bunch of reasons. I think a lot of it, I guess a simple term, let's say, forget all those other factors. A simple term would be, I believe things stay small when leaders have small thinking. If leaders have a small vision, it's not going to grow. But if leaders dream and have a vision for more and have a bigger vision, and they work towards that and they lead in that way and they build good culture and all that good stuff, it will grow. So I think it has a lot to do with vision. All right, I have one more question. How to prepare for leadership. The best way to be a prepared leader is to serve. If you are serving people, then God is preparing you for leadership. I love when the disciples are talking to Jesus and they're asking, well, he's pretty much telling him he's going to leave and he's going to the cross. And their response is kind of like, well, who's the greatest among us, right? Almost like, who's going to lead when you're gone? And Jesus is like, man, you got to serve. The greatest among you is the servant, right? So the best way to prepare for leadership is to serve. Serve in any capacity, whether it's kids ministry, production ministry, outreaching, cleaning the church, just blessing other people, whatever it is, just serve. And as you serve, God's going to prepare you to be in a position to lead with a servant's heart. God doesn't want leaders who have the heart of a boss. God wants leaders who have the heart of a servant, because that's who Jesus was. That's who he is. He came, it says he came not to be served, but to serve. He didn't come to be a boss or just have people do what he wanted them to do and serve him, hand and foot. He came to serve others. And if we want to be good leaders in the church, we start with serving. Leadership starts and ends with serving. I guess we could say it that way. But I think that's the last question. I know we had a couple more on here, but I got to them on my Instagram. So if you want to see that, you can go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram, and you can see all the questions that are being answered there too. But guys, I hope this blessed you. I hope it helped you. I hope it encouraged you. Make sure, like I said, if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel so that you can see everything that's going on. We're going live this Sunday. We're talking about worship. It's going to be a long sermon, or a long form sermon, I should say, getting into some biblical ideas of worship. It's going to be a great time. Also, we're releasing a bunch of new shorts coming up, and so I'm excited for it all. But guys, thank you so much for watching. And we'll be live next week, so make sure you join us. I'll see you then.